Welcome to another episode of NextGenDDS. I'm Dr. Scott Menaker, one of your hosts, and I'm here with my good friend Mario Santiago, my co-host, and welcome, Mario.
Great morning to be here, Scott.
Yeah, super. So we've been talking kind of through a season of kind of building your team and your advisors, and the one we're going to talk to today, and one that's kind of dramatically changing, is kind of the legal and HR one. So we really... I guess everybody's worried about being sued, but that's not really why we're talking. You do need, obviously, legal representation for that, but we're also going to talk through, initially, let's talk through the legal piece of kind of having good representation as you're, certainly from my end, as you're doing deals and as you're buying practices and as you're structuring your entity, you got to have the right advice, and why having somebody who's familiar with the dental world is a good idea.
Yeah, I think that one's really important, Scott, because I think I've joked. It's like there are dental CPAs out there. And like we mentioned, we have a CPA firm that we work with in-house. We have the tax and business planning. But all those dental CPA firms out there, it's really more of a branding thing.
Absolutely.
It's not something super specific to dentistry. Now, a dental-specific attorney, that I think has a lot of value, because
no doubt about
from
it.
a transaction standpoint, Scott, you see a lot of people buying practices. They've done this over and over again. So for example, our attorneys, they only do dental. I've seen the mistake of people using other attorneys out there to write up the legal documents for a transaction, and they structure it wrong. They don't put in things that are common in agreements that are common that we see. So that one is really important, to get someone who has seen the dental world. They know what's common. They know what it's uncommon. They know what needs to be included.
Because there's lots of things that go into it, from covenants to not compete, to lease agreements, to structuring maybe an employment agreement if the doctor is going to, if the owner dentist is going to stay on, and how do you do that, and how do you protect yourself from, let's say there's problems with the work that was done, and how do you, because you certainly want to protect, you're not going to throw, you're absolutely not throwing anybody under the bus. I don't care. I mean, in my career, even if I disagreed with what dentists were doing, I was never really disparaging the work that somebody was doing.
No.
I just, that's just the wrong way. Even if it was really bad, and I saw some bad stuff. But I'm just saying, hey, listen, there's different ways of doing things and looking at it. I would have done it a little different.
That's a great point, Scott, because we've seen, like you said, we've seen other attorneys work. It's good work, but for another industry or for another profession, right? It's just nuances, like you said. So
if you say, hey, listen, my buddy got out of law school a couple years ago, and he's doing, let's say he's doing family practice stuff.
Yeah.
You need if you're going through a divorce, I did, you need somebody who's familiar with that specific area, not somebody who's doing corporate law.
Yeah, exactly.
I had one of my best friends was a corporate lawyer, doing international business law, traveled the world. I mean, just knew that aspect of business. And somebody called him about a friend of theirs that was involved in, it was a crazy story, of some kind of murder trial. And he goes, I do mergers. I don't do murder. And it was, we were laughing about it, but this was a serious thing. But somebody knew him and said, and it was a horrible domestic violence thing. She needed a good.
Wow.
And this woman had been abused, but she needed a murder. She needed somebody, defense attorney, not a corporate. Yeah. So you need to make sure that they're well versed, and so we always, as I'm doing structuring, either buy a practice, purchase, or let's say a partnership. I always will say to them, listen, we have a firm, McGill & Hasson, that's been with our company part of our company for 40 years. They do dental. They've just done dental. They understand everything that you will do, from estate planning to employment, all of that stuff. They understand the dental. So we advise, we give them their name, and I go, if you don't want to use them, no problem. but you have to have somebody who understands
Correct.
the nuances of all of these deals. Because if it gets done wrong, what happens? You may become in a bad situation.
Yeah, and it
that's
can
just
be
not structured right.
Yeah, it can be as ugly as getting sued, but sometimes, like, let's say you got partners, that's where disagreements may come into place, where something wasn't put in writing in the event that something goes wrong. Or some people just handshake things, and people don't use or look at the legal documents until you need them.
Yeah, I had these two doctors I was talking to. They got out of dental school. They were best buddies. They moved across the country to the West Coast. They opened up a practice together, and 16 years later, they're not speaking to each other. They're still partners because one doctor decided he was going to open up another practice on his own. He's spending most of his time there. The other dentist, she's like, what happened to our partnership? I'm doing 90% of the work, but I'm giving you 50% of the profits.
Yeah.
You know why? Because they didn't structure their partnership. And they didn't, how is the income being divided? You want that in writing.
Yeah, you want it in writing.
Especially if you have a partnership, and those just need to be done. I help with a lot of that, but I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
And I always say, listen, this is going to get spelled out in probably a 30-page document, and maybe it's overkill, but it's overkill. It's only overkill if you never need it, and you hope you never need it. And if you never need it, money well spent. But if you need it, you want that person to have understood all of the nuances that go into the dental world.
Yeah. And I would say, if we take a deeper dive, Scott, I'd say there's three main areas here we'll talk about is, one, if you're an associate, you need some sort of employment agreement. Two, if you're an owner or if you're buying a practice, if you have a partnership, you need those legal documents that you talked about. And then on the back end, if we're talking about estate planning, so when you pass, how are your assets being distributed? That's another important piece as well. So, if we start with the employment contracts, that's a part that you want to make sure you need someone who knows dental. They know what a general dentist gets paid. They know what a periodontist gets paid. They know how these contracts should get structured, and that way they can serve you best. So when I'm talking to people that are going out into the workforce, and I'm guessing you talk to a lot of them, Scott, is make sure you get a employment contract review from an attorney.
And I know a lot of times some of the schools, I've got some friends at some of the schools, dentists who are now kind of helping doing this advising, and they've seen a lot of these things.
Yeah.
It can be a 2-page document. Or I just saw one. I have a dentist that I'm helping with in a big partnership. Her employment agreement is 15 pages. Mm-hmm. And I understand it, but she still, I've advised her, I said, you need to have somebody just make sure. And again, it's not an expensive thing. They're not going to go spend, they're not going to go spend $5,000 reviewing this. Those are, unless it's really complicated, it's not going to be an expensive piece. But you need somebody who understands what these contracts look like to make sure that you're protected. Sometimes we'll see them now where a doctor's, going to work for maybe a large group practice and they got a buyout. Mm-hmm. You got to stay here 2 years. And if you don't stay here 2 years, it's going to cost you money if you leave early. Mm-hmm. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I want to make sure you read that.
And don't just sign it because they go, this is what I think. Now, maybe you may have to sign it to take that job.
Yeah.
There's certain things that are negotiable and certain things I think that are probably not going to be. But you want somebody to look at you sometimes and go, bull crap on that. Mm-hmm. Don't do it. Much the same as I do with doctors, looking to buy things. Sometimes I'll go, this is great, sign today, giving them your right arm, this is such a great deal. And other times, I had a conversation with a doctor yesterday. This practice is overvalued.
Yeah.
You're going to take a big pay cut to go own this practice, and it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So we just want to make sure when you get these contracts looked at, especially in employment, just make sure that it's you understand what you're signing.
Yep.
And how long are you committing for? What's the repercussions on the backside if you leave? If you're not happy and you find out this isn't what they promised me. I'm not busy. There's not enough patients, or I'm so busy, I'm ready to kill myself.
Yeah.
How do you get out from under those? And I'm going to tell you, as the associate, these contracts are not written in your favor.
Yeah.
Why? And I get why the business is writing it that way, but they're writing it to protect themselves. So again, your point, very well taken.
And then the next stage is probably on the ownership side, right? It's partnerships. Another one that we get a lot of questions that we help people with is, hey, what should my entity structure be, right?
Yeah, for sure.
We talked about this at another episode, but LLC, C corporation.
Is it a stock sale or is it an asset sale?
Oh, that's
We're not going to go into that one. Maybe that may be a whole other episode. But
I'll give you one example though, Scott. Now that you bring that up, I had a family transaction once where, dad and son, they thought they didn't need to hire anybody. They said, let's save the money and just do it ourselves. They slapped 70% of collections as the purchase price. What the son didn't really understand is that the practice wasn't very profitable. So 70% was actually too high. And when the son became the owner, they also did a stock sale between this family, which meant that the son couldn't write off the equipment and amortize the goodwill like a lot of young doctors can do. Putting that in basic terms, he didn't have a lot of the tax perks on the front end of being a young owner.
Right.
So didn't have the tax perks, overpaid for a practice. The son couldn't pay his bills because the profit of the business wasn't enough to support the loan. So they, saved a couple grand on the front end, and we never like to hide behind it. This stuff is not cheap, but it's as long as you're getting quality work, you're getting good value for what you pay for. But let me tell you, that doctor's paying way more by the mistake that he made of just not hiring someone.
It's amazing. It's like in our advisory role, my fee, to do this, depending on the deal, can be, the $7,500 range, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, depending on the complexity of things. But I go, you're getting ready to go buy like $1 million practice. What's $7,500? I said, even if we don't change the structure of the deal, don't you want to know? I said, you're getting ready to go let's say you're going to go buy $1 million house. You're going to go spend 20, 30 grand. Where's the value in this? And so the same thing, from your side, as you guys are sitting down and doing your tax and planning, business and tax planning service, you're going to save people that money. And having peace of mind, I would do it all day long.
Priceless.
All day long. So don't be, I think to your point, Mario, very smart, which is don't be short-sighted. Yes, you've got to make, part of your investment is investing in advisors to give you the smart piece. This one guy that he's paid me this money to advise him, unless we can get this price changed on this practice, I'm telling him to walk. Did I just give him great value for that service? Yeah. But the other side is I'll help him on the next deal at no cost.
Yeah.
So he finds another practice. We stand behind what we do. We don't know if the practice is a good deal. We stand behind it and go, I'm sorry, it was a bad deal, but I don't want to penalize you. So the next deal, I'm going to do it at no charge, just because that's just the right thing to do. Yeah. So, the point you're making of buying these practices and these partnership deals and getting the legal is, one, make sure it's the right deal, but two, make sure that it's structured the right way, because that can impact tremendously the profitability of the practice as well.
Yeah.
And what you can write off and what you can't. And again, we would need a lot of diagrams and charts.
We could take a deep dive, but no, that's absolutely right, Scott. I've even seen it we've talked about this with doctors who just aren't in the right structure when they have partners, and it's creating a lot of complications. So just make sure you get the right team to help you. And then the last thing that I mentioned, that you'd really need someone in the attorney space on the dental side is really someone to do your estate planning. So you'd be surprised how many people come in here when we're meeting with them and they have no wills, living wills, trust, nothing like that. And what that means is, your estate is going to probate and everybody's going to be hawking after it, pretending to be your best friend to get some of it. So you really want to make sure you put legal documents in place on, look, where's your money going? What's going to happen? And keep the money.
Yeah. Do you set up trust? Do you set up,
Exactly.
Do you have, let's say at some point you're going to own your real estate.
Yeah.
Do you have that in a separate entity or do you just keep it in the practice?
Yep.
What do you advise people?
Well, I'm not an attorney, Scott, so I'm not going to.
But a lot of times you'll say you need to talk to somebody about having your own real estate LLC.
Yeah.
And again, all of that is about protection and making sure that you understand where all of those things are going and tying it into the practice is and understanding those things is very important.
Yeah.
And while it may not have to be necessarily a dental specific sometimes,
that's right.
You got to have somebody who really is sitting down and I've had an estate planning attorney for years. Update my will every couple of years as things have changed. And how do we pass this through and how do I keep, not probate a lot of this stuff so that it gets tied up and that things transfer and there's all of those things that need to go into that. So having good legal representation, and if you've got it all tied into your practice it's a great idea to have one person do a lot of that for you. But making sure that all of those things, again, you hope you never need to get to those things.
And we talked a lot of the things that we do, but I wanted to touch on something we were talking about earlier, Scott. The one we don't do, we are not employment attorneys, for example. But we were talking about different examples where I've seen doctors get in trouble because of this one, and I highly recommend doctors hire employment attorneys when they need them. For example, if they need to terminate someone. So I've seen it on the good side where I told the doctor, hey, hire the employment attorney before you terminate this person. They documented everything. The employment attorney actually told them, look, you have this window where you need to terminate this employee now. So it was well worth the money for this doctor to talk to the employment attorney for a bit, make sure that they protected themselves and didn't open anything up to a lawsuit. I've seen it on the other end, though, where somebody didn't use an employment attorney, terminated someone, got sued. The legal costs really racked up. So you want to make sure you protect yourself nowadays.
And so originally, I think as we started talking today, we were talking about combining human resources and legal. Mm-hmm. But I think we've really shown that we're going to separate that out. We're going to come back to human resources in our next episode because I think we're still getting into it. We've got more to talk through in terms of the legal side because today's world is different. When I got out of school in 1985. Nobody was getting sued for anything.
Yeah.
That was just not the way of the world. And today, you can't avoid hearing about, suing somebody, whether you've been in an accident, a personal injury, somebody's wronged you, you've been fired. You've been fired. Even if it's been legal and you've done everything right, you still might get sued. And having somebody to help protect you in that, who understands employment and getting good advice on the front end. And we'll talk a little bit with how you establish your human resource policies. Do you hire a company? Do you do it on your own? I'll have some recommendations there, given my experience, but we'll talk about that next one. But I think your point is spot on because even if you're right, you may still end up having to pay for it.
Yeah.
If you don't have the right kind of guidance. So I think great point. I want to go to the malpractice attorney. Because I pray that you never have to deal with that. In today's world, right or wrong, there's probably somebody who's going to potentially come after you. I had one experience. I had a patient, a long-time patient, good relationship with the patient. Nothing was wrong. Everything was right. Everything was documented. She ended up reaching out to an attorney, and I got a letter. And so the question is, what do you do when that happens? And so here is what you do. You never, you do not destroy files. You do not change notes. You not change anything, but you contact your malpractice carrier and you say to them, I've received a letter and how I need guidance on how to proceed. Don't pick up the phone and call the patient. Don't call the lawyer's office, because they're going to want, they've sent you a letter. We want this, we want this, we want this, we want this. And even your thought is, hey, I want this to just go away. I'm going to follow through. Don't say anything. Because all of that will come back to haunt you, I think. Mm-hmm. So in this case, I contacted the malpractice. They said, great, we're going to be here to help you. Send me the notes first. I did. He goes, we'll take care of this. So they took that burden. This is what I'm paying for. They took that off of me. They looked at this and said, this is a bunch of crap, but we're going to do it the right way. They contacted the attorney. They filed all of the stuff, gave them all of the information. And in 2 weeks, it disappeared because the other attorney went, there's nothing here.
Yeah.
So because you get a letter doesn't mean it's going to end up bad. Make sure you're doing the right, again, what we've said, do no harm, do the right thing. If something's out of your wheelhouse, don't do it. Don't become a hero and get yourself in trouble. But if you get a letter from somebody or you get a letter from potentially the state board, is your point, don't think you can handle it all and make it go away. Mm-hmm.
That's a great example, Scott. I'm glad it didn't turn out to be a bad story.
Yeah, I mean, again, but I'm telling you, I can't imagine how many nights I don't remember how many nights I didn't sleep.
Yeah.
Thinking that I've gotten a letter from a lawyer potentially trying to sue me, and I really didn't do anything wrong. Mm-hmm. And even when you haven't done anything wrong, it's still a horrible place to be. Sleepless nights worrying about it. And when it finally went away, it was great. But knowing that your malpractice carrier that's their job, to advise you and guide you. They have attorneys on staff. Mm-hmm.
It's what you're paying for.
That's
right?
what you're paying for. Every year you spend $2, $3, $5 grand. I mean, it depends on your specialty as well. That's what you're paying for. So we just advise you to, make sure you're getting the right advice and paying for that from a legal end. So, I think originally we thought this might be a quick one, but I think we've really spent almost 25 minutes here talking about legal advice and guidance and why it's important. And any final thoughts before we go to the human resource one?
I think those are great. Well, looking forward to the next one, Scott. And I think this was a good one on just how to protect yourself and make sure you don't have sleepless nights.
For sure. No doubt about it. Thanks. We'll see you next time.